Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we're diving into one of the most famous biblical verses in history. We're talking about a single sentence that has literally shaped nations. We're going to discover how an ancient historical blueprint handed down thousands of years ago holds some incredibly profound implications for both your personal faith and sweeping global theology today. If you've ever wondered how ancient history actually connects to modern spiritual renewal, well, you are definitely in the right place.
Here it is. If my people, who are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and forgive their sin and will heal their land. Wow, right? This one sentence presents the complete foundation for our entire journey today. It's this grand promise that we're going to examine through a macro lens, then zoom in real close with a micro lens, and finally zoom all the way back out.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the ancient blueprint, break down the 4 actions and 3 promises, look at modern personal application, and wrap up with the concepts of being grafted in and rejecting replacement theology. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Ancient Blueprint, Solomon's Temple and National Crisis. To set the stage here, picture this. Right after King Solomon dedicated the newly built temple, God laid down some ground rules for the nation. The phrase, "called by my name," wasn't just some casual label, it was huge. It represented 3 profound things. Ownership, like carrying a literal royal seal. Relationship, meaning an intimate connection. And representation, basically reflecting his character to the whole world.
Now, God was pretty explicit. He said if he ever brought about physical disasters, we're talking shutting up the heavens for a drought, commanding locusts to absolutely devour the crops, or sending plagues, well, this verse would be their solution. In that ancient context, physical disasters were direct consequences of turning away from covenant laws. But, and this is key, they weren't meant to just destroy. Instead, they acted as a deliberate, albeit painful, wake-up call to get the people to return to God.
Moving on to Section 2, 4 actions, 3 promises, the formula for restoration. This verse brilliantly structures itself as a sequential formula for divine restoration. It's essentially a massive if-then statement. The if portion demands these 4 interconnected actions. Number 1, humble themselves. This means dropping the human pride, recognizing limitations, and submitting completely to authority. Number 2, pray. This isn't just reciting words, it's sincere communication. Number 3, seek my face. This is about prioritizing his actual presence over just asking for favors. And number 4, turn from wicked ways. This demands true repentance, like a deliberate 180-degree turn away from sinful behavior.
And then comes the then part, the conditional response. If the people perform those 4 actions, God makes 3 incredible promises. First, I will hear from heaven. That's active listening, guaranteeing those prayers don't just hit the ceiling. Second, I will forgive their sin, granting a complete pardon and removing that barrier of guilt. And third, I will heal their land. Back then, that originally meant restoring agricultural abundance to Israel, bringing absolute restoration to the entire nation.
Which brings us to Section 3, Modern Personal Application, from Nation to Individual.
When we contrast the ancient setup with the modern believer, the translation is pretty striking. While ancient Israel dealt with literal, crop-eating locusts and actual droughts, modern believers are usually facing internal droughts. So healing the land today focuses on mending broken relationships, calming anxious minds, and bringing deep spiritual renewal.
The whole crux of applying this today is understanding the difference between seeking his face and seeking his hand. Applying 2 Chronicles requires stepping off the throne of your own life and seeking an authentic relationship with the Creator, just for who he is. It's moving away from treating prayer like some cosmic vending machine or an emergency hotline for quick favors, and instead just prioritizing his presence.
All right, let's zoom back out for Section 4, Grafted In, Romans 11, the New Testament shift.
Here, our source material introduces the Apostle Paul's agricultural metaphor of being grafted in. Imagine this. Gentile believers are described as wild olive shoots that get grafted right into the cultivated olive tree of Israel. Legally and spiritually, the text argues this allows them to inherit the exact same promises originally given in passages like 2 Chronicles.
But why does this actually matter for us today? Well, according to the text, God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. They don't change. This implies that Israel's entire historical cycle, the wandering, the judgment, the restoration, serves as a reliable blueprint. If God keeps his promises to the root, those grafted-in believers can absolutely trust those exact same promises.
And finally, Section 5, Rejecting Replacement Theology, a Scriptural Warning.
This brings up a major historical controversy, replacement theology, also known academically as supersessionism. This is the view that the Christian church completely and permanently replaced ethnic Israel, basically taking all the blessings while leaving behind the judgments. However, looking strictly at our source material, the concept of being grafted in acts as a massive caution sign against this perspective.
It's all about the critical distinction between grafting and swapping. Think about it. A grafted branch humbly draws its life and nutrients straight from the original root. It shares in the foundational blessings. Swapping, on the other hand, would mean evicting Israel and totally replacing the original tree entirely. And the biblical text explicitly uses the imagery of grafting.
From that specific imagery, the source outlines 4 distinct scriptural warnings against replacement theology. First, it completely rejects the replacement label entirely. Second, it attacks the immutability, the unchanging nature of God's covenants. Third, and this is absolutely huge, holding a theology of replacement actually fosters spiritual arrogance. Let's think back to 2 Chronicles 7:14 for a second. What was the very first command? Humble themselves. Feeling spiritually superior directly violates that command. And fourth, it outlines an ongoing mandate for believers today.
And that mandate? It's to pray for those original natural branches. Because the covenants are permanent, believers are commanded to pray for Israel. When you do that, you're essentially invoking that ancient 2 Chronicles 7:14 formula on their behalf. The text points to a promise that when the Jewish people ultimately invoke this ancient formula themselves, it's going to result in unprecedented global spiritual life, literally an ultimate healing of the land on a worldwide scale.
So, as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this to ponder. If an ancient promise, given to Israel thousands of years ago, holds the literal key to modern spiritual renewal, how does that change the way we view the global, interconnected family of faith today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring these fascinating blueprints.